This is Jack Moelmann, and today is the 20th of August, 2012. We happen to be up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. This is my home up in Wisconsin, and we have a very interesting person with us today. His name is Gary Hanson, who is really from Milwaukee, been active in the Dairyland Theater Organ Society, Dairyland chapter of ATOS. Is a renowned organist, technician, restaurant owner, and just been around the world quite a bit, and we're going to find out just what he has done and why he's done it and where he's going from there. So, Gary, when did you first get interested in music?
I think when I was a very young child, my neighbors had a piano, took piano lessons. I went over there and loved the piano, and I tried to figure out how you could play the piano. And back, if you looked at early simple music, it always had numbers on the music for fingering. So I deducted that if I knew the numbers, I could play the piano. And of course, that wasn't the way. But I went to a parochial school, and we had a lot of pianos in the school, a lot of music, and we had an old reed organ in the church basement. And I fell in love with that reed organ, and I would play it every day of the week after school. I could even go on weekends and play it, and that was sort of the start of the music. Also at that time, we had two neighbors that both had player pianos, and of course I fell in love with the mechanics and the player piano part of it too, so that was the start of music in my life. But I did take lessons on the piano from a young age, and that's how it started.
So where did the theater organ or even the church organ come into this, other than the reed organs you might have found in people's homes?
Well, again, going to parochial grade school, I began taking organ lessons, and then I asked the church and was able to use the pipe organ, for practice. And that's basically the start of organ. I wasn't too aware of theater organs until in the 1960s, and I was probably 25 years old. And I was working on a piano for a doctor, and he said there's this big Kimball theater organ in downtown Milwaukee. And it was at the Warner Theater. It's the Kimball organ that's now in the Oriental Theater. And he knew the manager, and he called him for me, and he said, if you want to go down there, he'll let you play it. And I never played a theater organ. The combination action didn't work. And but I went down, again, every Saturday, and I worked my way around it, and eventually I started playing the organ before the movies started.
Well, now you've also become quite a technician, one that knows the inner workings of this. How did you get into that, or is it just by default? If you went to play the organ and it didn't work, you had to fix it and you learned how?
Well, part of it, again, was my big interest in pianos. I started fixing player pianos. And, a piano has 88 keys. Every part is exactly the same. Player piano has the same parts. And once you get sort of into the mechanics of things, working on an organ chests, the bell, the pneumatics, the primaries, secondaries, it sort of just falls hand in hand with some of that piano work that I had done earlier. And I did buy a pipe organ out of a house. I knew nothing about it. It was in a person's basement. We packed it up in a truck. Didn't know how to move pipes. It must have been a disaster. I don't think there was a pipe that was wrapped or crated or packed. And I moved it. It was 100 miles away, and I moved it home to Milwaukee. I, in the meantime, bought a house, and there was no room to install that organ, and I was able to sell it right away or shortly thereafter. And then, again, I had player piano background, and the pipe organ pizza restaurant in Milwaukee, which opened July of 1976. I had met the owner, and I had met the featured organist, who was Walter Stroney. This was before the place opened. And the owner knew I knew how to fix pianos and player pianos, and they had an upright player that needed to get connected to the pipe organ, the theater pipe organ. So I got the job of wiring that up and installing the piano to the organ. And the organ, which they bought from a fellow in Ohio, hadn't been rebuilt in many years, and they, of course, had to get the restaurant open and the doors open. And once they got the place running, Walt Stroney was, of course, the organist, and it had dead notes everywhere, blown pneumatics, primaries, and I just began volunteering at the time, and I helped them out. I started releathering. We did primaries, and then we did secondaries. And I also would sit at the organ and play once in a while. And Walt Stroney said to me, "Why don't you consider being a sub here? We could use a sub." And I said, I'm not good enough to become a sub. But I did. And that's how I got involved with theater organ.
Well, somewhere in here you got involved in the food and restaurant business. Now, is that related to what you're doing now? How did you get into the restaurant business? Not necessarily restaurant and organ, but I mean the food business.
Well, I've always liked to cook myself, and I enjoy food. But I, again, was working for a pizza restaurant that was having a lot of problems because of the food, and they were losing customers. And I just observed a lot of things. I used to jokingly say I could write a book on how to close a restaurant, because I could see how things weren't, there was no quality control. People were second guessing. The staff wasn't properly trained. And that sort of gave me a start into watching, the food in a pizza restaurant, as it were. I met a customer who owned a office building that had a small deli restaurant in the office building that was basically for the tenants of the building. And he wanted somebody to operate it, and told me it could be a turnkey operation. Just come in here and take over. And I did. And I ran it for about 3 years. But in the meantime, I was still...
Here's where you get the break there, my phone. Sorry for that interruption. It was my phone call. And by the way, I hope our viewers are noticing in the background beautiful Lake Geneva, and it's a Monday afternoon. It's a little cool up here compared to the temperatures we've had, but most of the other video interviews I've done, they've always been in hotels with a curtain as a background, so this is a first for this type. So go ahead, Gary.
I was talking about running a small restaurant, and in the meantime I still was playing part-time at a pizza restaurant, and Milwaukee happened to have 2 pizza restaurants, and the second one is the one I currently own. And when they both opened, they both actually opened in 1976, and the restaurant I eventually bought, we considered our competition, and we hated the place and made fun of it all the time. And to this day, you learn a lesson: you never burn a bridge, because you're going to have to cross it again later someday. And I ended up owning this very restaurant that I made fun of and joked about. But anyhow, that second restaurant had been sold to a group of investors. They were doctors that were looking for tax shelters. They bought 4 restaurants. And they knew nothing about organs, about pizza, or anything else. But they knew who I was, because I was also a sub there from time to time. And I also still had my little restaurant deli downtown. So they came downtown to lunch one day and they said, how would you like to work for us and manage our restaurant? We really need the help, and we know that you can also repair the organ, and it needs a lot of repair. And I was a little apprehensive about that because there were so many investors involved, and I felt it would be difficult to work for a lot of people. But a long story short is I ended up, they sold me 20% shares, what they first did, and that's how I got involved.
Well, go ahead.
Jack is jostling my memory here, thinking about how these things all fell into place.
Well, let's look at this. Okay, we've introduced the subject of the pizza restaurants, and the table's vibrating here a little bit. I used to play in a Shakey's Pizza Parlor. I think I mentioned that in an interview I did. Most of the organists that we have on the circuit today, at one time or another, started or played in a pizza parlor. To the best of my knowledge, the heyday of them was in the late 1960s, early 1970s. The West Coast had all kinds of them in California. And today, we've narrowed it down to about 2 or 3. Your pizza parlor, the Organ Piper in Greenfield, Wisconsin, which is near Milwaukee, and the Organ Stop in Mesa, Arizona, are the 2 flagships of the pizza parlors, in most people's opinion, that have pipe organs in them. What do you feel is the rise and fall? I mean, the pizza parlors flourished. Why and what happened to them?
Well, I think you have to know almost the individual circumstances of a lot of those restaurants and locations. And I visited a number of them in their heyday because I wanted to get ideas and see how they operated, hear the organs. And then later we heard stories about, well, why things went bad. And there were many cases was simply that they didn't serve a good food product. And you have to serve good food, because people will not just come for the music itself, I believe. Others, I think, there were many very grandiose, big establishments, and they started out with a very heavy debt load. They had a lot of partners, and when you have a big debt on a pizza restaurant, you have to have a large volume of people every day to pay your overhead, and if you can't do that, you just don't stay in business.
Well, how come it was the pizza? Why not a Morrison's Cafeteria or a steakhouse or something else? What's the big attraction for pizza, with the pipe organ being in it?
Well, I'm not even certain of that myself. We all know that the first pizza restaurant in somewhere around San Francisco was Ye Old Pizza Joint, and they were open for like 35 years. But it was always, I believe, a very small place. I think it seated about 100 people. And it was run by basically the same family. And I think the wife passed away. The husband, I think, just wanted to retire. But pizza in popularity is growing and growing even yet to this day.
Is it simple food? Does it take less management skills to run pizza as opposed to some other kind of restaurant? Why not a Chinese restaurant or something? Is it the food, the simplicity of it, or
I don't think it's the simplicity, but it's the fact it's very casual dining. You know, if you go to a dinner restaurant with waitresses, you need wait staff, drink orders, appetizers. People don't want some background music of a loud theater organ drowning out their conversations. They'd rather, I think, dine in more quiet. But a pizza parlor attracts birthday parties, family. We just went through lots of graduation parties earlier this summer. Of course, school sporting events, baseball teams come in after games, and it's also basically reasonable. I mean, you can feed a family of 4 nowadays probably for the same price or less than going to McDonald's. If you go for a McDonald's full meal, you may be spending $6 or $7 a person, and you can do a pizza and a pitcher of soda. And it's still reasonable, and I think that's part of it. And people love, the number of pizza restaurants, the franchises, the frozen pizzas available in supermarkets. It's a very popular food.
But would you agree that the organ, the theater organ, however big it happens to be in these restaurants, is an attraction to get people in the door? And once they're in the door, they have to enjoy the food as well as the organ, otherwise they aren't going to come back.
I do agree. That's very true. And the organ is, we are unique in Milwaukee now that we've been in business 36 years. Our local community considers us a landmark. I constantly get customers that come in with their children that say, I used to come here as a child, and I enjoy bringing my children here. We like it. It's clean. We like the food. We don't like the type of restaurants. There are other restaurants for families that promote games and a lot of little kids, and they don't like that kind of atmosphere. They still like, I guess, even though it's raucous and loud, maybe we're a little more refined than a Chuck E. Cheese, if I should mention that type place. I think that helps too. Again, we have large table seatings where you can put 20 or 30 people in one group together. You can't go to more restaurants. Most restaurants have tables of maybe 8 if you put a couple of tables together, and we allow this large seating. People do enjoy the music. I mean, now more than ever, I literally see people dancing in the aisles all the time. And our organist recently has started playing Lady Gaga music, Michael Jackson music, and I always watch the response of the customers. And when I see the grandmothers swaying to Michael Jackson and Lady Gaga, I know they're all enjoying it.
How come you and Mesa are the only pizza parlors really left? Because you're doing a good job, or the others something wrong with that? I think you've alluded to it as we've talked here, that the management structure has maybe not allowed it, but you must be doing something good.
I did mention that a lot of the restaurants that came and went were really large buildings. I mean, they would seat 500 or 600 people. Required a big staff of maintenance, big staff in the kitchen. Organ Piper actually did expand about 25 years ago and added about 130 seats. So we started out very small, and partly I think what has helped keep us going is the fact that it's still a smaller operation. Right now I seat about 250 people. And
you have things besides pizza?
You mean on the menu?
On the menu.
Well, we don't have a complicated menu, but we do have sandwiches. We have some simple Italian things like spaghetti. I think that what's kind of interesting, and I thought about this, and everybody knows the big restaurant in Mesa, Arizona, Organ Stop, has been very successful. You would get a copy of an Organ Stop menu and an Organ Piper pizza menu, and put them side by side. We almost virtually sell the same items, line by line, the same appetizers, the same spaghetti, a small dinner salad, the pizza. We have not really gone, we haven't done pasta dishes and elaborate things like that take more training and preparation. And I think, that's helped, and Mesa is doing the same thing. and they're doing very well. So it doesn't need a real elaborate menu to keep people coming back.
I'll tell you what, Gary, we're coming toward the end of this. Why don't you do a commercial and tell them where you are, maybe even the address, phone number, whatever you want. This is your chance for commercial, and then we'll sort of bring this to an end.
Okay, well, again, we're Organ Piper Pizza in Greenfield, Wisconsin. We have a website. It's real simple, www.organpiperpizza.com, and you can find out any information you want to know, history of the organ, the organists, our menu, our location, a map on there. So I think that's what I would do. I would just go to the internet and look us up.
We never did say what kind of organ you have. How big is it?
It's 30 ranks. So Wurlitzer, console, all basically Wurlitzer mechanics, and some Kimball pipework. But over the years, we have tried out every rank of pipes you can imagine and swapped them out or bought better ones just to improve. It doesn't sell another pizza. That's my stock line. But it satisfies myself, and it certainly satisfies the musicians that have to play it, and they enjoy it.
Well, good. Gary, you're a very exciting person. I've known you quite a while. And you live up here. Greenfield, by the way, is near Milwaukee, in case somebody didn't know where that was. But today is the 20th, Monday, 20th of August, 2012. We're up here in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And we wish you well and hope your pizza parlor survives. I go there quite often, whenever I can, and the food is wonderful, and the music's wonderful, and the people that work there are wonderful too. So thank you, Gary, and this is Jack Moelmann, and we'll see you all the next time.
Thank you, Jack.